So what does the messenger of the gods, Mercury, also known as Hermes, have to do with this new moon in Virgo on August 22nd/23rd, depending on where in the world you reside? Well, stay tuned till the end, because this particular new moon, the skies have a story to tell. Thank you all for joining me here today. My name is Gullveig, and this is Be the Whole You. So to really understand the new moon in Virgo, I think it's really important to understand the story of Hermes/Mercury. Mercury was one of the only gods that could travel between the worlds. So there was certain rules that these gods had to abide by, and one of them was you didn't go into the underworld typically, unless there was some extenuating circumstances, and definitely you would need to be invited, typically speaking. But Mercury was the messenger, and he was allowed to go between the upper worlds, the heavens of the gods, the middle world of man, and the underworld, which was the domain of Pluto, also known as Hades. Mercury in astrology, the planet Mercury, it rules over our intellect, it rules over our communication and technology. The god Mercury was also seen to be a teacher and communicator. And to understand his message, we have to take a look at this beautiful trine energy that has been going on for a little while between Saturn and Neptune that have been conjunct at 0 degrees in Aries. Right now, Saturn's at 0 degrees in Aries, Neptune is at 1 degree. And that is in a harmonious alignment with Pluto, which is at 1 degree in Aquarius, and then that trines Uranus at 1 degree in Gemini. Now, Uranus at 1 degree in Gemini is squaring off the moon, which is at 0 degrees in Virgo. It's also squaring off the sun because the new moon and the sun are always conjunct during the new moon. The sun is our identity. It's how we see ourselves. And the moon is our emotional side. It's our subconscious side. Now, these heavy hitters of these outer planets of Saturn, which is Father Time, Neptune, which is our spiritual connection, our imagination and intuition, Pluto, which I've already discussed a bit, which is the god of the underworld and of hidden things, also rules the subconscious to a certain degree as well. And Uranus, which is miraculous and often unexpected change. These folks have been having a roundtable discussion about the changes that are needed for quite some time. And now your emotional self has been brought to the table, and it has been escorted by none other than the messenger of the gods himself. Now, the planet Mercury doesn't make any major alignments during this new moon. However, Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Our moon, our emotional self, is hanging out in Mercury's crib, and it's talking to Uranus, which is hanging out in Mercury's other crib on the other side of town. And so, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Now, Gemini is much more of the communication. It moves a lot more fast than the energy of Virgo that's also associated with Mercury. Virgo is more about assimilation, analyzing, and breaking information into very logical, organized systems. It's associated with our digestive system for that particular reason, being able to discern, be able to weed out the helpful things from the unhelpful things. And that is what is happening as we prepare for the eclipses that are coming up next month in September. We have a lunar eclipse, and we also have a partial solar eclipse, which is also very interesting because the next new moon in September, on September 21st, is going to also be in Virgo. So having two new moons that are back to back the same sign is, it's a little special. But what makes it extra special is the fact that this is going to be a partial solar eclipse. And then right between this new moon and the next new moon on September 21st, we have a lunar eclipse that is it's always on a full moon, that is on September 7th. So this new moon in Virgo is preparing us for the portals of change that will be planting very potent seeds in September for next month. Well, it's also kind of reassuring because this new moon, with our emotions being brought to this kind of heavy hitter table, well, Mercury is providing, almost as the host, if you will, a backdrop for this debate of how much are we really willing to participate in the big changes at hand, analyzing all of the different parts, all the different pieces. So the recent kite that we had, along with this new moon, will give us a lot of really clear perspective. But this clear perspective might also bring up a lot of overwhelm, and maybe we even get a little discouraged. The other thing that kind of compounds that rough energy is the fact that Venus is squaring off Chiron during this time as well. So we might feel like we've had some setbacks, especially in terms of health or healing, where we feel like maybe we took 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. I'm here to tell you that by next week, Monday, Venus starts moving, and it's not going to be squaring off Chiron anymore, and things will start feeling a little bit smoother by next week. But during this particular new moon on the 22nd/23rd, things are going to feel a little prickly. So what makes this prickly? Even though the heavy hitters are all getting along right now, Saturn and Neptune, Pluto and Uranus, they're pretty much all in agreement of what needs to happen. The moon is in a quincunx with Saturn and Neptune that are both in Aries, as well as Pluto that's in Aquarius, and it's in that square with Uranus and Gemini. So even though your emotional self has been invited to the table by none other than the messenger of the gods himself, our emotional self is very likely to feel very intimidated by all of this big energy. A quincunx is one of those kind of energies where it just feels like there is no resolution. It feels like it's an all or nothing. And so we might be put into a position where we feel like no matter what we decide, it's going to entail some sort of big sacrifice. And we may have to go back to the drawing board, so to speak, to really analyze and to think about, are we seeing all of our options clearly? And it might actually be a good idea to pause on making any really big decisions right now, at least until the end of next week, because on Monday, August 25th, the moon starts making very different alignments with both Pluto as well as Uranus. So where we have this conflicting energy between the Uranus and the moon that is being mediated with Mercury, now the energy has shifted and there is a trine. There's a trine between Pluto, Mercury, and Uranus. So something shifts. We get a different perspective, or at least we come to an acceptance of the thing that might need to be allowed to let go in order to move forward. The word sacrifice comes from an old root word that means to make sacred. And that's something that might be helpful to keep in mind, that when we let something go in order to manifest something else, to make space for something else, or to compost what we have to let go in order to be able to have a fertile soil for those new seeds, those new intentions that we want to grow and to blossom, that act is sacred. That when we repurpose our experiences, when we allow ourselves to grieve, when we allow ourselves the proper process to be able to really, truly have the freedom of making space, then what it is that we've allowed to let go, no matter how painful the process is or how painful that past experience is, it is now no longer refuse. We are now tapping into the natural rhythm of healing that allows even the most seemingly destructive experiences somehow be able to be composted into the fertilizer that creates new life, that creates new beginnings. And that is also the magic of Pluto. Pluto is the god of the underworld, but he's also the god of hidden treasure. And he's associated with death and rebirth. Now, most of the time we get kind of squeamish around the first part, but In order for there to be a rebirth, there has to be a letting go. And that process is sacred. We are now being given the opportunity to analyze what the hidden treasures and or sabotage, poisons, exist in our life. And Saturn and Neptune making this harmonious alignment between Pluto on one side and Uranus on the other represents a crossroads, very similar to this Two of Swords energy in the tarot deck, where we have to make a decision. And on the 25th, there is going to be another kite. There is a sense of clarity that comes together. We're brought to a place where it's time to make a decision. What kind of changes do you want to implement, and what are you willing to really commit to? What areas of your life need to be allowed to be made sacred, to sacrifice, for the new beginning? Mythology is completely defined by this question of what sacrifice is necessary and or is our hero willing to make in order to be able to tackle the monster, overcome adversity, and to come back again with treasure in the hero's journey. So what does this conversation probably sound like between all of these planets? Well, you have Uranus and Gemini that's like, let's just change it now. Let's just change it now. We already know what needs to be changed. Let's just blow it up and let's just go. Let's do it. And then you have the Moon in Virgo that's like, yo, wait a minute. I don't know. That doesn't feel very safe. Let's analyze, let's plan. Maybe we need to get like a research group together. Well, we can do a study. Like that's basically where the Moon is at. Mercury has already had a discussion with both Pluto, Neptune, and Saturn. Mercury already knows where everybody stands, and he's trying to mitigate between everybody. So you have Saturn and Neptune, which are essentially, they're the crossroad masters right now, alignment-wise in astrology, because you have Saturn, which is structure and time, and you have Neptune, which is imagination and intuition, but its flip side, its shadow side, is delusion. So this crossroad can go one of two very interesting ways. Do we want to choose familiar lies that even when they're uncomfortable, it's like, the devil that you know is better than the one you don't? Or are we willing to take a risk on the unfamiliar for something that's potentially better? And that is the clarity that we will get in a few days when the kite arrives. Now that kite energy on Monday the 25th, it isn't going to stick around for long. It's only going to stick around for 2 days. So here's the nice thing. The new moon that is coming up on the solar eclipse, if you don't get it right this time, if you choose and you're like, oh, that wasn't the direction I wanted to go, what the next new moon does offer is another fresh start. So this is almost like a practice play for the powerful eclipses that are going to be coming up in September that are going to be planting seeds for 2026. This is a real opportune time. I mean, when do we ever get dress rehearsals in life? Like never. But this time around we are. So let's take a look and see. I'm going to actually, let's do something a little interesting for this video, a little bit different. Let's ask, what messages does Hermes, aka Mercury, have for us for this new moon in Virgo on August 22nd and 23rd, 2025. All right, so we have the Hierophant. This guy right here, this is Saturn. Saturn, because Hierophant is about tradition, he's about structure, he's also about mentorship. He's about, say, like it can be about institutions, but it's definitely more of a traditional kind of teaching role. He always teaches from the School of Hard Knocks. That's the kind of lessons that Saturn always teaches. Him and the Queen of Wands are having a discussion. I'm looking at the Queen of Wands and I see Persephone. Persephone is the goddess of the underworld, Hades' consort. And the part of her story that seems very pertinent to us is she became the goddess of the underworld because she ate a pomegranate seed that was from the underworld. If you don't want to eat the food from the underworld because then you stay there. And so that's what happened with Persephone. She ate this pomegranate seed and she ended up having to stay in the underworld, where she stays there during the winter, and she is allowed to go visit her mother during the spring. So in what ways do you feel that you might be nurturing yourself, but in reality that you might be regurgitating things from the underworld, from the past, from traumas, from areas of your life where maybe they're being kept alive on life support and it's time for them to be able to be released? That there's this illusion, Neptune, that what is nurturing us is actually trapping us. This is the kind of the dichotomy, right, between freedom and safety. This is always a balancing act that every human being has to constantly be reanalyzing to make sure that we aren't so much into freedom that we're in free fall, nor are we so clinging to safety and security that there's no room for growth and life becomes dull, dry, boring, and eventually unnurturing. Then we have the Four of Wands. And what comes to my mind here is Mercury's house has been turned upside down. So I think that the moon and Uranus right now, they're having a conversation, and it's like he invited them over for dinner and like a polite chat with everyone. And it's like his party's gotten crashed with this conversation between Uranus and the moon. They're squaring off, by the way. A square is full on conflict. An opposition is avoidance. Quincunxes is like, like we're just, it's just not coming to a resolution. But a square is like full on no. And that, like I said, that energy is going to change into next week. But right now it's going to feel a little rough because here we have the next three cards that are kind of defining what that conflict is about and what it is that needs to be done. So the reason why Mercury's home is being turned upside down because he invited Uranus and the moon to have a conversation about the needed changes that Saturn and Neptune have been initiating between Pluto and Uranus. The thing that really needs to be allowed is allowing the past hurts, the past betrayals to be allowed to be composted. What I mean by that is like not completely like let go as in to sweep them under the rug and cancel, clear, delete, but to truly honor them and to grieve them in a way where we come to a resolve and we get to move forward a little bit more freely. I always look at the swords in this card as tethers. They're energetic cords that are binding us to a past situation, a past hurt, or another human being. And cords are never good. If you're wanting to know how to cut cords, then go ahead and download the free Starseed Survival Kit. The information is in that kit. And then we have, that goes along beautifully with the Ten of Swords, we have the Nine of Swords reversed. This is all, both of these cards are more positive in their reversal because it means that the time is right for them to be allowed to be put to rest and to be able to come to a place of acceptance where we can move on. So what's happening with the Ten of Swords is it's putting us in a place where we are thinking about the worst case scenarios. The worst case scenarios, because the Nine of Swords is about worries and nightmares, and it's typically about mental loops of anxiety. And so the Ten of Swords is saying if we are allowing the past to stay in the past, then we will be less predispositioned to think of the worst case scenario, because these alignments of these planets right now, they're supercharged for us to manifest. We can either manifest a future that repeats the past, and it will do so if that's what we're focusing on and that's what we're embodying, or we can plant seeds of intention to embody and to move towards and to align with a more preferred future. And that is what the Queen of Pentacles is here to say. The Queen of Pentacles, she's in a law of attraction card. And the law of attraction isn't just about writing pretty affirmations and just wishing really hard. It's about embodiment. It's about, what are you committed to resonate with? What are you committed to not just align with, but to radiate as the embodiment of? Where the universe has no option at that point but to respond to this new way of being. That's the Queen of Pentacles. And the Queen of Pentacles is the embodiment of wealth, of health, of prosperity. And because she embodies it, and she uses the sacred feminine way of attracting that which is already hers, she then can nurture everyone else around her. That's why there's fruit and vegetables and such usually in this card. It's because it's not just a card where she's just attracting abundance for herself, but through her own abundance, she then is able to help fill the cups of others, not from her own cup, but from the overflow that is now on the saucer. The Queen of Pentacles knows how to direct and manage her energy. So I would like to give a shout out and thank Hermes /Mercury for this insight. And I will hold that intention that his house will calm down a bit by the middle of next week. If you got anything useful or you found this video entertaining, please consider hitting the subscribe and the bell icon. All of those things help this channel. And if you would like to make sure that you never miss a thing, and you would like to learn more about how to protect and direct your energy effectively, then click the link to the free Starseed Survival Kit. Once there, you'll also be kept in the loop on the upcoming virtual events. The first event is coming up on September 4th, 2025, where we will explore the inner technology of the liberation and manifestation currents of the chakras. During this conversation, we will also talk about how the lunar energies, how they do affect these currents, and then I will lead an exploration where you will experience these currents for yourselves. That is also in the link below. Thank you all for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Bye.